This presentation today is taking a research trajectory from my doctoral thesis that has been part of previous presentations at this symposium. So I'll explain more about how it evolved as part of the presentation, but I'm partway through this particular piece of research at the midpoint. So it's presenting early findings from the first phase of research. So obviously I'll cover the pathway to how this current study emerged, have a quick look at the literature, and then go into what this current study about teaching geography beyond specialisation is all about, and where we're up to at the moment. Rafaela, can I just check, is this pace of speech okay? Yeah, okay, thank you. All right. So what I've discovered in my last 2 years of being a lecturer in the Macquarie School of Education is that a lot of students are being required to teach geography when they go out on professional experience. And they come into a classroom such as this and they shudder. And I say to them, is it an empty classroom or is it a classroom that's full of possibilities for you? And just as part of those informal conversations while I've been there as a bit of a mentor with them, has kind of allowed them to reframe this idea of teaching a subject that's scary and potentially something they don't know about into a possibility or an opportunity. So I think that's also one reason why I was quite captivated by the study from Margaret that was shown earlier today. I spoke about this being a trajectory from my doctoral study. So in my doctoral study, I traced the journey of 5 pre-service teachers through their final year of university and professional experience, and then into their first year of teaching. And what I discovered with these pre-service geography teachers was that out-of-field teaching was a reality for them. And they were teaching numerous subjects, including languages, commerce, agriculture, technologies, more than they were actually teaching within their subject specialisation. But from that study, it emerged that through a structured process of reflective practice, they were able to articulate ways in which they could start to understand a subject that for them was out of field. If I went back to some grey literature around geography and what we face in the discipline, we already know that out of field teaching happens a lot in geography. We just weren't expecting that a lot of geography teachers would also be teaching out of field. And then I guess as I became more involved in the work of this collective, I was able not only to share outcomes from my doctoral study within some of their publications and various podcasts, but was also able to feed into a national summit where we ended up with a series of recommendations, one of which being that there needs to be further research conducted and led within initial teacher education. So by taking all of these things together and realising that a lot of pre-service teachers were also being required to teach geography out of field, I decided to sort of take some key learnings from my doctoral thesis and really explore what it means to teach geography as an out of field pre-service teacher. So what do we already know from the literature? I think we already know that it's common. It's a common experience for graduate teachers, and we're starting to realise that it's happening more and more in the pre-service teacher space. We also know that there's a complex definition around out-of-field teaching. We know that it's a reality of entering the profession and that it can occur at stage of schooling. It can occur within and outside your subject, so near field or way beyond. And it can also be part of your identity and how you see yourself. From a recent study that was done by Gina Creerwalt and Shujun Lee from the University of Melbourne, we know that 45% of teachers who were surveyed nationally within the last 2 years were teaching geography as an out-of-field subject. Whilst that was clear, what was less clear is what can be done to support these teachers. And I guess this is where I hope my small contribution from research will be able to answer some of those questions. We also know that pre-service geography teachers are required to teach out of field. And we also know that whilst they're busy teaching other subjects which are out of field to them, they have also been required to mentor and support their own colleagues who are teaching geography as an out of field subject, which is quite a crazy scenario to be in when you're in your pre-service and early career years. Why does out of field teaching occur? A number of reasons. It can occur because of precarious employment. In Australia, probably much like many other countries, we're facing a severe teacher shortage. And, you know, teachers are being recruited quite quickly if they're willing and able to teach, but also this precarious employment or casual employment where you might teach across a number of schools in any given period contributes to this incident occurring. We also know that geography has a bit of a blurred identity. People aren't really too sure what it is. So a lot of school leaders tend to think that anybody can teach it because no one can really define what it is anyway. And we also know that there's this blurred responsibility between who is there to support those who are teaching out of field. Is it the professional associations? Is it the university? Is it the school within which the pre-service and graduate teachers are involved? Is it a combination? We also know that when teachers are teaching out of field, it compromises a number of things. It compromises the integrity of the subject, the learning outcomes of students. It implicates classroom management and teacher well-being, and can contribute to decisions about leaving the profession. So some recommendations at play are about to develop research partnerships and alliances, and to have some initial teacher education-led research. The idea being that we'd hope to develop and find some ways to develop an integrated and coordinated response to this incidence of out-of-field teaching. And so when I looked at all of that together, a project was born. And teaching geography beyond its specialisation, I put in a request for early career researcher funding at the university, and this funding was awarded from the Faculty of Arts. So I'd like to acknowledge that contribution into this research, and also say that I'm assisted by two very capable merit scholars who are high performers at the undergraduate level within the School of Education. And being able to work alongside a lecturer on a research project is what we hope might become a pathway into a Master of Research or a future career in research for them. So the purpose of the current study was to be able to develop a strategy that initial teacher education providers might be able to adopt to support those who are teaching out of field, pre-service teachers who are teaching out of field. Obviously, because I'm always all about geography, I'm hopeful that it will be contained within sort of geography as a first sort of pilot. I also wanted to progress understanding about the role of social labs, because in my doctoral study, social labs, which was part of my methodology, emerged as an important support structure for the pre-service teachers to come together and discuss their often quite difficult realities of teaching, about which out-of-field teaching was one. I also wanted to progress understanding about how effective the teaching standards for geography were with an out-of-field teaching group. So these standards were developed from the practice of experienced specialist geography teachers. I tested it out with pre-service and early career geography teachers, but we haven't yet tested it out with out-of-field teachers. So this is kind of the purpose behind the current study, and developed into 3 research questions. Trying to develop some understanding about what the emergent conditions are that are leading to pre-service teachers being required to teach out of field when they're on professional experience. Because really, I think you'd hope that whilst they're on pre-service, on professional experience, they'd be teaching within their field. I'm also interested to know how pre-service teachers manage this circumstance of teaching out of field while they're on professional experience, and from that hope to glean some ideas about what initial teacher education providers can do to provide support. So as part of the study, I'm using a theory practice-based reflection process similar to what I did in my doctoral research, but this time with a group of out-of-field teachers who are teaching geography as an out-of-field subject. We're using these geography teaching standards for them to explicitly kind of reflect upon their ideas and their practice, and to be able to identify where their ideas about geography teaching fits in, and also where their practice fits into the standard, so that they feel that they've got something to support them. We're also going through the idea of being able to engage in reflexive practice, and to do that we use reflexivity theory. So I'm asking them to reflect on their conditions, their personal beliefs as a teacher, the structures that are around them, the culture of people, time and place, and to be able to work out what's helping or enabling them and what's hindering or constraining their practice. And as reflexivity theory is coined around a structure agent problem, my problem is that we have pre-service teachers as agents who are working within the structure of professional experience and being required to teach out of field. And we don't know too much about how this works or not for them. So don't need to see that again. So I've got a very small group of purposefully sampled participants, and we're having 3 phases to the study and 3 one-hour online social labs, which is about to be extended into a 4th one, just due to the nature of the study. I'm analysing the data through a deductive process using those JOG standards and the items of reflexivity theory explicitly. We use these in our conversations together, and we also use these in the data analysis. There's 3 phases. There was before professional experience, there's midway in professional experience, which is where we're at now, and then there'll be the end and reflective element that will happen around November, when the current group finish their professional experience. In the social labs, we've got this driving question. So every time we meet, we're exploring this question about what makes your geography lesson geographical. And within that, I'm asking the pre-service teachers to reflect on their circumstances, to be able to understand why they're in this situation and what they can do about it. So we draw on their thinking and their lived experience. I get them to kind of order their thinking and their ideas about what good geography teaching looks like. I also give them a micro teaching opportunity where they can assess my practice against the standards. We have fishbowl and peer review activities, and then we use all of this together to use the JOG standards and the items of reflexivity theory to not only reflect on their current situations, but to set goals to start to move themselves forward and hopefully develop confidence in their practice. So in terms of question 1, which was being able to identify what are some of the emergent conditions that are, requiring pre-service teachers to be teaching geography when they're not trained to do so, it's ultimately a situation of the timetable of being in a HISI faculty and the supervising teacher that they have. In New South Wales, geography is core learning up to year 10. So if you're in a HISI or social science faculty, you can pretty much expect to be teaching it. So they felt that there was no choice. And they also felt that, oh, sorry, I meant to remove that from here. So ignore this one because it comes up in the next slide. And you can see from the participant quotes, I'm a commerce and business teacher. It's just a given, you'll teach geography. It's not something I studied, but here I am. It's not my choice, but it's the reality of being a history teacher. I'll just be doing geography. I'm not actually doing English, which is my second teaching area. So we can see that these structural emergent properties are really items of constraint, but an important emergent condition as to why they're in this situation. However, there are conditions that help them manage this circumstance, okay? And they're being enabled by this theory, practice, reflection approach, where they're able to use the JOG standards to understand their practice. They've been able to connect with the Professional Association for Geography Teachers, and they've expressed also that the study themselves, the research study, has helped them engage with what it means to teach geography, to sort of talk through some of the moments and the frustrations that they're experiencing with it. And that they find that by engaging with the social lab activities, of which we've had 2 at the moment, you know, they're starting to feel that they're supported and that they can manage this thing called teaching geography. They've also got very strong beliefs about what it means to be a teacher. And whilst this is not their choice, they have each spoken about how they have a responsibility to sort of craft a lesson that's meaningful for their students and do the best that they can. They also have some beliefs about what geography is, and as they articulate these and they see them in the standards, they start to really sort of understand and confirm their beliefs as well, that they do know something about geography, even though they thought that they didn't. And actually, they're starting to quite enjoy it. So you can see through some of the quotes here. Participant C does have a name, but not yet. She's looking forward to the social lab because it gives her reassurance and support. Here we think about the beliefs about what it means to be a teacher. It's important for me to learn the content and be enthusiastic for the students. I think geography is all about maps. They look at the jog standards, maps are there, it's part of it. But if she's going to teach it, she wants to be confident when she's in front of the class. And then mention too about the support offered by professional associations. Unfortunately, there's been things that have constrained their practice a little bit, and this has come from the culture of people, time and place, of the school that they're in, and entrenched practices where there's a lot of geography being taught in these schools by out-of-field teachers. And I really like this quote, because the idea of just ringing it in, you know, and here's what we're doing today, go forth and multiply. Here's a textbook, teach from page 20 to 24. You know, this particular participant is like, I don't want to teach like that. I want to learn a bit more. I want to create my own materials. I want to learn it for myself and develop meaningful lessons. So some of them are finding it hard to manage this situation of being in a faculty where geography is not celebrated and perhaps other subjects are. So coming to the end now. So obviously you'll see I haven't quite got to research question 3 because we're still within data analysis phase. We haven't completed the studies yet. But what we're finding so far is that these pre-service teachers are teaching near field. So they're within the HISI faculty, but it's just not their subjects of specialisation. And it's structures that are causing this to happen, which wasn't a choice. It was timetabling structures of the school. It's a curriculum structure as well, where geography is positioned in HISI and made core learning. But we're also finding that the structures of evidence-based through the JOG standards and a mentoring structure such as the social labs are acting as enablers for these participants. We find that their action is actually driven from their personal beliefs about what it means to be a teacher. And I guess indirectly at the moment, we're grappling with the idea that there could be potential for us as an ITE provider to be able to perhaps lead the development of social labs that act as a bridge, we hope, in time between schools, universities and professional associations, so it can be a slightly more full and developed structure. But as I said, some early findings for question 3 are not yet quite visible. And that is the end of my presentation.